Hi guys, how are you?
Good, mate. How are you?
Hey, everybody.
Fine, thank you.
Welcome to Black Lotus, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And today we are continuing our interview with Lloyd Zehner, who has been a ufologist and paranormal investigator for well over 40 years. And so we are going to talk to him. But first, let's say hi to the usual crew here. We've got, if I can get it back here. There we go. We got from DarkHour Paranormal, Michael Roser, and we have our resident scientist, Wild Trees, as usual. Guys, thanks for joining us once again. And Lloyd Zehner, it's great to have you back, man.
Well, thank you very much, Damien. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
I kind of want to jump right.
We were going to chat, or yeah, go ahead. I know what you're going to ask, but go ahead.
I want to jump right into it because just before we went live, we were talking about Nick Pope, and I'm friends with Lloyd on Facebook, and he had posted a few articles about how Nick Pope really isn't who he seems to be. You want to explain that, Lloyd?
Yeah, he's kind of been exposed big time just in the last 6 or 8 months. And the person that exposed him knows him probably better than anyone else. It's Philip Mantle. He's a big writer of UFO and ufology over in the UK. Written many books. Right now he's promoting the Calvin Parker abduction case with a new book. But he broke out several documents, certified letters from the MOD organization itself on questions that he petitioned them to answer. And those being Nick Pope's time with MOD, what his duties were, did he do field investigations on UFO reports, etc. And they just buried him, absolutely buried him. He was with MOD roughly a little over three years, and he was nothing more, come to find out, than a desk clerk filing reports that came in across his desk. He did 0 field investigations on UFOs or orbs or any sightings that came in through their office, and he's been burned pretty good. I watched him on a special a couple of nights back on Ancient Aliens, where he kind of sat there with the group with William Shatner, with all of the cast and characters of experts, so-called experts that do the Ancient Aliens show, and he didn't have a whole lot to say. But when he did speak, he talked about the fact that, well, I'm different from all you guys in my knowledge and expertise because I was with MOD and did things, different things than you guys do. And of course, that wasn't even true. But Philip Mantle has exposed him big time on Facebook with verified documents from the organization itself, stating exactly what his duties and responsibilities were. And it's clear as day that he is not who he says or portrays he is, knowledge-wise, experience-wise, and what his duties were when he was with MOD in the UK. So as far as I'm concerned, he's a dead issue at this moment.
Yeah. I'm wondering if, I'm wondering if he has come out and made a statement against this.
No, he hasn't done that. In fact, Philip Mantle claims that Nick Pope was going to be a guest on a big show over in the UK, and when he found out that at the last moment they were inviting Philip Mantle to be a guest also on the show, he canceled the show. He didn't want to face being questioned by him. Yeah. So it's just a matter of time before the gig is up, so to speak. Yeah. And I think a telltale sign will be if Ancient Aliens, that particular show, drops him. I'm waiting to see the shooter drop, so to speak on that show because it's absolutely ridiculous. And I've done a little bit of research into what Philip Mantle exposed in a way of documents and so forth, and they're genuine. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Wow.
It's clear.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what a disappointment. I feel betrayed. I really liked Nick Pope. I mean, he was always categorized as kind of the Nick Fox Mulder of Britain. I mean, and so yeah, kind of a disappointing
Yeah, he had character.
story.
He definitely had character and charisma.
Yeah,
Sometimes those are the two things that a lot of these shysters will kind of use to pull the wool over our eyes. But I like what Lloyd's saying here, that eventually the gig does have to be up. How
Yeah.
long can you hold the lie? I mean, even after your death, there's no way that you personally can suppress anything that comes out afterwards. Eventually, people, most times, realize who you really were. It's just sort of a moot endeavor, and it's really a waste of energy.
Yeah, really. So last time you were on with us, Lloyd, you talked pretty extensively about your UFO research. This time, I think we kind of like to focus on your paranormal research, your ghost investigations. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah, like
Okay.
I said, you've been doing this for over 40 years. I'd love to hear some of your experiences.
I've got a bunch. I got years worth of stories I could talk about. I'll tell you about one case I'm working on right now. Actually, just to tell you something too, before I get into some of this stuff, I'm 70 years old, and I pretty much have slowed down in the last couple of years doing field investigations with groups. I'm getting too old for it. Right now, I'm just doing things that good friends might call me up to want to join in and help them or review some films or audio tape. So I'm doing very little in the field. In fact, what kind of brought me to a decision-making point was a little over 2 years ago. Was on an investigation in an old place, an old house that had a lot of activity. And I went up in the attic by myself, and there was some old furniture up there, and decided to sit in a chair with a recorder and see if I could catch any EVPs. And while I was up there, which was a couple hours, I fell asleep in a chair. And what woke me up was I got scratched pretty bad on my back. Scared the
Ooh,
living
man.
daylights out of me. Yeah. Yeah. Never been scratched before. Seen other people get scratched, thought they got scratched. But I've never been physically scratched before. I mean, I could actually feel claws going down and into my skin.
Now, let me ask you very
And
quickly, when you started feeling those claws, was this while you were still in your sleep state, where you just coming out? Was it something that woke you up, or as you woke up, you were starting to feel this? And one of the reasons I ask is because a lot of times when people end up getting some sort of physical mark, especially the scratches or the burns, they sort of appear over a short period of time, but over some length of time, rather than, if I were to walk up to you and swat you, that appears immediately. So for you, when did you start feeling and noticing that sensation? And then at what point did you realize that you were being attacked?
it happened as soon as I was being touched. You know how you get a jerk reaction waking up from a deep sleep? As soon as I was being touched and actually felt them going down my back, and the burning sensation when it probably traveled maybe 6 inches down my back when it stopped. So that initially, I mean, as soon as I woke up and felt that, I sprang up straight out of the chair and turned around. I didn't know, if it was an animal up there in the attic, like a raccoon or whatever that could have caused it. I turned on a flashlight. There was nothing up there. And I immediately went downstairs to find the 3 other people that were with me and asked them, try to get a timeline going there, what they were doing, where they were, what was happening. And come to find out, a new member, who of course now is an ex-member in the group, was taunting in the back kitchen of this house as I believe this happened to me, and I think that could be the
That's
reason
not
why
very
it
smart.
happened,
Oh,
why it
boy.
brought it on.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of
Mhm.
talking.
Yeah, and you know,
I
The
know
last thing
that's
you
a
should do as an
no-no.
investigator is to instigate something like that, you know?
Yeah, I don't believe in it. I don't like to be around people that brag about that even and say, "Oh, I'm in Vegas." You know, I taunt them to bring them out if it's a dull night or dead or whatever to get some reaction, and I don't buy into that at all.
Yeah.
That's taboo as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah.
that's what was going on without me knowing downstairs in the back of this house, and I'm just guessing that's what brought it on. I wish it would have happened to them instead of me. But that kind of that kind of got me thinking and wondering, and going out for 3 and 4 day stints, 3-day weekends and stuff to do investigation. You know the time that's involved in it. It's all night in the wee hours of the morning, and then having review film and video for hours and days after that. I'm just to the point right now where I think I'm happy I've experienced some of the things that I have, but I'm to the point now where I'm getting too old to be able to invest that kind of time and dedicate myself to it. So I'm kind of
Seems like a
picking and
boring job
choosing
to me.
things that it's not really. It depends on the case and the location and the people you're with. You know, it can be a
Mhm.
tremendous amount of fun, and it can be a tremendous amount of letdown.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different elements to it. I'll tell you one I'm working on right now, and it's too bad that uh, we've got all this going on with COVID because it's kind of stopped. The investigation part of it stopped. But I'll tell you what happened. My wife has a small antique shop in town, and I happened to be in it several weeks back. And a new couple had moved here from California. They were one of the people that had enough of California with high taxes and regulations and you name it. And why they moved to my little town, of all places in the world,
Yeah, they're
but they
invading
did.
Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well, property's cheap here. You can buy a lot of acreage and old antebellum type homes and if you came from California living in a ranch type house and sold it for $2 or $3 million, you're a king here.
Yeah.
You're a land
Yeah.
baron. But anyway, this couple happened to come in her shop. I was standing there talking to my wife, and we had never seen them before. We just about know everybody here in town. And they introduced themselves and started telling us they were from San Diego and just bought a home here and so forth. And I asked them, which home did you buy? And I knew exactly which home it was. It was an older antebellum type home. And we were just making small conversation. And a good friend of mine happened to walk in the shop a few minutes later. And he walked on over, and I introduced him to them. And I said, these are the people that bought Joe Barron's house, which is just a few doors down from your uncle. He says, oh, yeah. He says, I know the house well. He says, I got to ask y'all. He said, what's your little girl's name? And they both looked dumbfounded and said, we don't have any children. I mean, this couple's like in their mid-50s. They said, we don't have any children. Why would you ask that? He said, well, I saw your little daughter, a redheaded girl, riding her tricycle in the backyard the other day. And I went, oh, my God. And they said, we don't have a daughter. And of course, and one thing led to another, and I'm thinking, he didn't make this up. He's not that kind of a person. If he saw that and he knows the house real well, because his uncle just lives a couple of doors down. I asked him afterwards, I said, you really see a little child? He said, yeah, she was riding a tricycle in the backyard. So I got to talking to them a little further, and they wanted me to come out to the house and try and do an investigation and look into it. I got as far as doing an interview with them and setting up a camera in the backyard. But both of them came down with COVID, and it's a little over 3 weeks now, so I'm kind of letting it lie.
Yeah.
But the only thing that I found out of the conversation with them was that before they moved, they had bought a piece of furniture, and his wife said a few small things were happening there at their other home. And I'm just wondering if there's an attachment to that piece of furniture, and it's followed with them and came with them here to Georgia. So it's yet to be found out, but that's one I'm kind of involved with right now.
It sounds like the opening to every single horror ghost movie I've ever seen, where the couple moves into this antebellum house and they're happy with it and everything is great. And then suddenly all hell breaks loose in the house, I mean, everything from Amityville Horror forward,
Oh, yeah. We've heard that sort of thing, too, wherein somebody sees a child on a property wherein the inhabitants have no children and they have nothing to do with children. It's usually a good conversation starter when you meet your neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Lloyd, is this the only one that you're working on right now?
No, I'll get to the other one in a minute. The only thing that's interesting about this case, too, if it's not an attachment type situation, is that the city graveyard is about 1.5 miles back behind their property.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't know. I don't know yet. I know people that have lived in a house before. They've never had any type of paranormal activity. So the house was definitely not a haunted type house before they moved in. It is an older house, though. It was probably from the early 1900s, I would say. It's a nice house. But no, I'm working on another case. Still, I've been off and on this thing now for about 2 years, and it's a pretty interesting case. I had been seeing this house. It's probably about 20 miles from where I live. Drove by it many, many times, often wondered about it. And one day I happened to be coming down the road and saw 2 elderly ladies at the front gate locking it up. And I stopped and got into a conversation with them. And they had grown up in the house, lived in the house. The house was built pre-Civil War. Was rumored to have been a house prior to Sherman doing his march through Georgia that held some Civil War treasures that were being guarded and taken over by soldiers for a couple of months. And these 2 women grew up in a house. Their family, the house has been in their family forever since then. They did say it had a lot of paranormal activity. And the house was being sold, and they said, well, we don't know if the future owner would want us to put you in touch with him and all that sort of conversation. And I said, well, you can always ask. They said, but would you like to come and see it, while you're here right now? And I said, yeah. And it was a real stately old Southern built home. Pretty good size, too. It was probably about 5,000 square feet. It's on about 75 acres of land. And I got a chance to hunt around. They gave me the key to lock the gate up and left. So I got a chance to go crawl under the house. I like to find old bottles, and I did find some
nice.
underneath the house. There were quite a few. There were quite a few, actually. I mean, some pretty good bottles, valuable bottles, too. I told them about it afterwards. They said, yeah, you can keep them. We don't want them. But they had some pottery under there and stuff. The funniest thing was, you're going to think I'm kidding you when I tell you this. I thought I heard, the hoof beats of a horse and the noises and squeaks that a carriage makes when it's driving down a bumpy dirt road.
Right, right.
When I was up under there, I thought I heard something like that. Actually, I crawled out to look because I thought somebody was driving down the road or on a horse coming down the road, but I didn't see anything. And I looked in through the windows and I said, wow. I said, I wish, I wish this place wasn't being sold because these two ladies were so kind and nice. They probably let me do an investigation there. I said, but who knows? Well, long story short, as usual, the people that bought the house decided they were going to have to do extensive renovations, and they bought a travel trailer, parked it out in front, and they had 4 kids, 4 small children. And they were going to live in a travel trailer while the house was being renovated. And it was like it hit the fan. As soon as the renovation work started,
Sure.
these two women that used to own the property would stop by and check on them and see how things were going. And they ended up putting the new family in touch with me. And I was just amazed at some of the things that I had heard. First one was that they were on their 3rd contractor. They couldn't keep people out there working because they were seeing shadow figures, tools being moved when they came back the next day to work, lights being left on that they know they turned out, and hearing moans and groans and you name it. I mean, everything imaginable. But 3 contractors actually quit and walked off the job. And I mean, here in this little town, we don't have but 3 or 4 contractors to begin with. So, I mean, they were running out of real estate with people there to work. And yeah, so the small, his son, I guess he's about 8 or 9 years old. I wanted to talk to the children first and find out some things that was going on with them. And of course, the 2 little girls said that Daddy's always mad at us and doesn't believe us because we're taking turns to take a shower. They only had 1 bathroom operating at the time because a plumber quit who was working on the other bathroom, and they walked off the job. So they only had running water in 1 bathroom, which everybody was sharing. But the 2 little girls were saying, every other day, Daddy's getting mad at us when he gets up and goes in to use the bathroom because he keeps saying we're leaving the lights on and we're turning them off. But my dad doesn't believe that. And he said, we're leaving the lights on in the hallway and here and there and so forth. And we're turning them off. I promise you, we're turning them off. The little boy, I started talking to him and telling him a little bit about myself. And when he found out I was into UFOs and so forth, he says, well, he said, I'm going to tell you, Mr. Lloyd. He said, you're probably not going to believe me, but I saw a UFO out here. And I said, really? Describe it to me. He says, well, right after dinner and it got dark, I came out of the camper to walk our little dog. And I went back behind the house over in the field where that big circle is. Now I said, I didn't know about this circle he was talking about. And I said, what circle are you talking about? He says, oh, there's a big circle back there behind the house. If you walk back there behind the house, you'll see it. I said, okay. I said, well, tell me about this UFO. He says, well, I was back there walking the dog and I saw it come up out of the ground, but it was just like floating. It looked like a blue balloon. He said it was shiny and bright and it was floating along. And I said, well, how big was it? He said, maybe the size of a basketball. He said, and then it took off and got faster and faster and brighter and brighter. And it just went out. I started thinking, I said, wow, what could that be? So 2 days later, I had some time when it was daytime. I drove on out there and walked back to the area he was talking about. And sure enough, there was a spot. It was like a perfect circle, probably 30, 35 feet in diameter. No grass growing on it. The grass grew all on the outside and shrubs, not a blade of grass inside this circle at all. And on looking in the ground and kind of scuffing up the dirt, it was a solid quartz field. I mean, solid, just quartz.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't put your finger down without touching a little broken piece or a quarter-size piece or a fist-size piece of quartz.
That's interesting.
How big was the circle?
30 to 35 feet in diameter. Perfectly round too. And yeah, and I put a lot of thought to it. I said, this being a farm, what could they have had structure-wise built round like this? Maybe something to hold grain. I'm thinking a grain elevator or some type of structure. But then I started thinking about, there is nothing here that indicates that. And why is there any grass growing in it? Not even a weed, nothing. And I think what he saw was probably an orb, a pretty good size orb, particularly in a light blue color. I questioned him about it afterwards, and he said that, I didn't tell you this before, Mr. Lloyd. He said, because I was scared to. And he said, and don't you tell my daddy I told you this. And I said, I won't tell him anything. He said, I think I saw a man's face in that ball. I said, a man's face? He said, yeah, I'm pretty sure it looked like a man's face in it. And I said, wow. So what's going on with that case now is that I did bring the team that I was in. We did do some things in the house. We caught some EVPs. We had a glass of water. We didn't see it happen, but it actually moved probably about 18 or 20 inches from the spot it was put down on a table to the other end of the table of where it was almost ready to fall off. And two of the other folks did see shadow figures. I didn't see any. Of course, that wasn't a surprise to me because, we had 3 different crews of contractors out there working, and they were all seeing shadow figures. Funny part was they were seeing them during the day and at night. I talked to one Hispanic fellow that said he actually saw a full-blown dark man-sized figure, 6 or 7 feet tall, walk right across the porch of the house in front of him as he got out of his truck to go to the house with some tools in his hand. So 2 of the people in the group did see shadow figures. And I go back out there occasionally. I'm not done doing what I'm doing. Our team has kind of given up on it, so I'm on my own, solo, going out there to do things, and still an ongoing deal. Biggest problem they're having right now are lights still being turned on in the middle of the night at the house, water running in the kitchen sink. Occasionally they report it to me. I do hear a little bit of noise of doors opening and closing. That's the kids telling me that. So it's a pretty interesting case.
I've got a question for you about this.
So I'm still kind of involved in that one.
Yeah, I've got a question for you about this, Lloyd. But first, I want to. Chuck Bam in the room has asked. He's referring to the girl on the tricycle. Was the tricycle a ghost bike? And I'm certainly no expert on this, but you probably know more than I do. But isn't it the case that ghosts will often project things that they knew in life, like a tricycle, for instance?
Yeah, that kind of interests me because the tricycle aspect to it kind of made lights go off in my head. I started thinking, well, gee, I wonder if it was an antique looking tricycle, bigger wheels than normal ones that are currently made today and so forth. And actually, what was interesting was the backyard is all grass. So, I mean, it would be kind of hard to ride on a bike, a tricycle like that in a grass type backyard. You would think more so in a concrete or a paved type area. My friend who I asked about it later said, oh, she was just pedaling away, riding a bicycle in circles in the yard. And he said, I was driving by slow looking at the house because I didn't know anybody had moved in it yet. I thought it was still for sale, and he wasn't sure anybody lived there just yet. He said, but the little girl was just pedaling around and riding all around in the yard. He said, I saw her for a good minute and a half as I slowly drove in front of the house and went down the side street, which he got a pretty good look at her. So,
also,
yeah, I think
Mother Scorpion in the room, referring to this other case you were talking about, is it a spirit or an alien that's causing the issues? Now we're talking about the the house where they were doing the renovations on, where the kids saw the little bald UFO. So is it a spirit or is it an alien?
Yeah, no, I don't. No, I don't think it's related to a UFO at all. I think what his name is Nathan. The little boy's name is Nathan. I think what he saw was a genuine orb, and not to get off on the subject of orbs because it's probably the most controversial thing in the paranormal for people to argue about. I've only seen a few real ones that I would swear that were orbs, real orbs, true orbs. But I think what he saw was a genuine orb, basketball size, bluish light in color. And when he added to me the next time I talked to him that he saw a projected face of a man in it, it led me to believe it was not a UFO at all. No.
I see.
No.
So why is it? I always ask this question because I'm always curious about it. But I mean, why is it that ghosts seem to have issues when you move into their house and and you start renovating the house, making the house better? Why do they have issues with that?
Well, one thing would be when you start to disrupt, let's say by moving a wall, okay, or enlarging a room. You move walls, you change the natural old walkway through the house. A door where it used to be is now 10 feet over to the left, or a wall is now where a door used to be. That particular pathway that they were used to in life and even in the afterlife of walking and knowing their whereabouts in a particular home are disrupted. That's one particular reason. The other reason is that I think they're used to people that lived in the house prior to them being deceased, maybe family members. In this case, this was a family-owned home for generations. And a new family's coming in, and they're not actually living in it these folks were in this travel trailer for a little over 6 months. They were going frequently in and out of the house to take a shower or get dressed, basically, in the morning and stuff. So they were seeing different folks coming into their space that they're not used to seeing. So, I mean, there's a lot of different factors to that. Many. It's hard to determine what the real cause is, but, renovations are probably one of the top things that bring on paranormal activity that you always hear about in homes that really didn't have many problems prior.
I like the way that you explain that.
You hear it all the time.
Saying that, wow, I'm really dark. Hold on. Saying that, the natural pathways have been disrupted when you make these reconstructions. It would make sense. And, just to keep in mind the idea that, these dimensions that, we want to call or separate, at least in the terms of conversation, might be sort of permeable within each other. So wherein this house that I live in here exists here and now, and I'm in this space, there might be something else that existed here or does exist here in the future on another vibrational level in the same exact space. Now, the question would be, what is it that's separating us? What is that somewhat horizon, if you will, that keeps us from interacting? And yet it seems like they can interact with us, but can anybody from this side interact with their side the way that they're doing here? Has anyone been able to identify an object of the fourth dimension and move that in another dimension? It's just odd. It seems one-sided. Again, it seems, I think this is more illusory than anything, that there is more power and more control over environments, let's just say, or places of residency from the other side than perhaps it is on this side affecting the other. God, that was a little convoluted, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, I think it kind of adds to the fact with me that people have remodeled homes, okay, that had no paranormal activity until they started doing that. Turn around and tell you that, well, the ghost walked right through the wall, and it came up the stairs, but it took a right and it went through a wall. And I'd ask, well, when y'all remodeled, was there a door right at the top of the landing that went down this? Yeah, they wasn't, but closed that off though. There's no door there anymore. Well, what about downstairs where you saying you saw, or you're seeing something coming through the wall? Did y'all doing it? Yeah, we put a wall there. Was a door there at one time. So, I mean, the pathway that I'm speaking about, it all kind of falls into play and makes sense to me that in situations where normal pathways in the past are disrupted, and you have paranormal activity and you're seeing this activity going on in one particular or two particular places, or the exact same spots where you did a remodel and remove things that used to exist there. So you don't know. The other thing too is that we really don't have any science yet in the paranormal. Everything is a hunch, a guess, a theory. Until we got actual factual science. I mean, we could talk about this until we're blue. You can only talk about, or I can only talk about what I've experienced, seen, had people tell me, cases I've been on, and so forth. And you're either going to believe it or you're not. It's just that simple.
No, I have two
That's
questions.
just the way it is.
I have two
what
questions.
trees? How's it going, buddy? I didn't know you were still here. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Waiting for the perfect time to ask my questions. So I do have two pretty involved questions, and they actually have to do with science and starting a science project. So I kind of want to consult with you. I have some questions.
I'm working on something for you. I'm going to get you an autographed picture of Bob Lazar.
Oh, thank you.
8 by 10.
Oh my God! Wow.
You'll make his day, though. I mean, you'll have a best friend for life there. At least that means it's great, man.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I love Bob.
I'm working on it.
Thank you. I know you can do it. So I'm thinking about starting two scientific projects, but so I'll ask you the questions. They're kind of involved. Okay. So the first question is, I'm curious. I want to start communicating with a Bigfoot, like leaving gifts for Bigfoot and starting a dialogue with Bigfoot. So I guess the first question is, do you recommend I do this? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you have any tips on how to do this? And then my second question is, I'd also, as far as the science project, I'd like to work on a way to prevent aliens from abducting people and prevent aliens from paralyzing people. So I'm just wondering, do you have any ideas of where I could start working on this? Like any ideas on how we could possibly prevent aliens from doing what they do? So those are my two questions. Do you suggest I start talking to Bigfoot, start a dialogue with Bigfoot? And do you have any idea where maybe perhaps I could start working with helping prevent abductions?
Okay, let's talk about Bigfoot first. Do you live in an area where there are, or is the possibility of Bigfoots?
Yes, I do.
You do. Have there been sightings in the area that you're thinking about exploring?
Yes.
Okay. Leaving them gifts, you hear about that a lot. I've had a lot of people talk to me about that. but I've had them talk to me a lot more, wanting my opinion about if they're an interdimensional type cryptid, and I think that's what we're dealing with. Would it be a good idea to try that approach? I think it would be a better idea to try that approach in a controlled type setting, as opposed to going out and beating on a tree with a baseball bat or howling like a fool in the middle of the night to try and get a response. You see a lot of these TV shows doing that kind of silly stuff, and they don't get any results. But yet you have other people that say they do. So I believe them. Is there a reason why you want to take that approach? And as far as leaving them gifts, do you want to see
Yeah.
if that works?
That's a good question.
Or if that would
Yeah,
put you in some type of contact?
Yeah, this is the reason why. This is my ultimate goal. So, like 2 weeks ago, we had someone named Gary. What's his last name? Michael
Russo, I think.
Yeah, Gary Russo or Gary Hootenholler.
Hootenholler.
And he got me thinking. I thought about an idea on the spot. I was like, we're talking about Bigfoot. And then I started thinking, and I've been working on this idea. In order to prove Bigfoot is real, or, to get some kind of evidence, people have been getting footprints and like audio recordings, videos, hair, all these things. But I'm like, look, what we really need is a body. So my ultimate goal would be, I want to start a communication with a Bigfoot. And this may take me 10 years. It may take me 20 years. I don't really care. But I want to slowly get to the point where I could tell Bigfoot, or I could tell them, like, I would really, really like you to gift me a corpse, one of your members. And then what I will do is I will respect that corpse. I will treat it respectfully, but I'll be able to write a research paper and publish it as an actual species. And then we'll be able to protect this land. We'll be able to protect your culture, protect your members, and it'll ultimately be a good thing. So that's why I want to start communicating. I know it may take me forever to do it, but I had to start somewhere.
Well, I would recommend, if you're going to take that approach, and that's what your goal is, to find a good spot way away from any other human activity. Get a trail cam, get a couple of good trail cams, put them up where you can get a good clear shot, not some blurry shot through the shrubs that you see 1,000 of on the internet every day that are shadows or pareidolia type things. Pick out some food and maybe some beads, trinkets.
Yes.
And put them in a dedicated spot or two, and don't put your trail cams 10 feet away from whatever you're going to try and attract them to. Put them in an inconspicuous place, because Bigfoot, from what I know and have researched on, they're not stupid. Okay, they're pretty intelligent. And the reason why I say that is we don't have a body yet. We've never found any bones yet. No one shot and killed one yet.
Absolutely.
And everything leads to the possibility of them being an interdimensional type being. I think personally, they use portals possibly.
Yes, I agree.
Why
I agree with everything you're saying. It's good. We're like on the same page with Bigfoot. That's crazy. Yeah, I have the same thinking that you do.
So,
okay.
But I think if you go into an area that's active, where there've been some sightings, and you can find a good spot way away from normalcy, so to speak, I think you'd have better luck at it.
Okay. Well, I think it's really positive.
Question about it.
I was just going to say, wrapping up the Bigfoot thing, I think it's really, I'm super happy that you're not like, that you think it's a good idea. Because I remember you talked about CE5 and you were just like, absolutely not. That's a bad idea. Nobody should do CE5. I'm glad that you don't. I mean, I'm just glad that you don't recommend it's a terrible idea to communicate with Bigfoot. It sounds like you're saying it's not as dangerous as CE5, which is positive.
Well, there's a case I worked on that involved CE5 that was pretty traumatic. Both of these people got into it, and they weren't very good at it, to be honest with you, from what they were telling me. But they ended up going to Mount Shasta and made contact
Yeah. Wow.
and both of them apparently were abducted.
Oh my God.
And yeah, both of them were abducted. Was a guy and his
It's
girlfriend,
like fish jumping in a
and
boat.
they didn't recall anything about. They didn't recall anything about the abduction. A couple of weeks later, they both lived in two separate apartments across town. The guy got up and everything was ransacked in his apartment, and his guns were pulled out of the closet and laid on the floor. But his whole apartment was disrupted. All the windows were locked. The door was locked, double lock cylinders. There's no way somebody could have got in and out of there. He had an alarm system. It didn't go off. And he got freaked out and went and stayed with his girlfriend after that happened. And both of them got to talking about everything, and come to find out they were both abducted during that CE5 session at Mount Shasta, where they were camping out doing this for a 3 or 4 day weekend. There's too much we don't know about just yet concerning CE5, what people are actually calling in. I don't want to lead to the point of it being demonic, okay? And a lot of people think it could be. So, I mean, we just don't know yet. It's still a relatively new subject that a lot of people are divulging in. So, how are you going to prevent abduction? You really can't. You can't. Go ahead, Damien.
That's what I was just about to ask you, because I mean, you know that I was abducted back in 1988. So I'm very curious about the answer to this question as to whether or not anybody can actually prevent abductions.
The answer to that is no. And
okay. Can I ask you this?
Everything that I've reached. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you said no, but give me a sliver of hope. If there was potentially a grain of sand's possibility of preventing it, the smallest piece, where would you lead me? What direction should I go in? I'm talking about just the slightest possibility. What tree should I be barking up? If there's even just a tiny possibility that is preventable.
Okay. What I was going to say to begin with is there's no way you can prevent an abduction from happening, okay? Abductions have two sides to it. They're either random or they're selective, okay? You're in a wrong place, wrong time, and you get abducted. That's how that took place, possibly. A random selection is a different story. It could be something that went on in your family for years, through generations, or it could be one that you have key DNA type factors or other possibilities in your genetic makeup that they're looking for. So you're a selective type individual. Now, anything is possible in as far as a grain of sand on trying to prevent being abducted. I've had a couple of people that, maybe one or two, that were involved in an abduction scenario, and these people had abilities. One was a psychic, the other one was an empath. And when they heard mental telepathy being used in their minds to try and control them, they blocked them. And one person, this woman, she was the empath, said that she immediately started putting counteractive type thoughts at the questions that were being thrown at her or said to her in her mind. And that blocked them from trying to take over her mind. And both of these abductions didn't happen. One said they got back in the craft and left. Yeah, one said they got back in the craft and left. The other one, it happened in her home, in her bedroom. She said they instantly disappeared. So that grain of sand you're talking about, yeah, there's a good possibility of how to block them, stop them from trying to totally take over your mind. And that's how they do
Okay.
it. I mean, it's totally mind control. You
Yeah.
know, very few cases are actually where they come and physically grab you and drag you off without first interacting mind control or pulling you up in some type of attractor beam straight up into the ship.
Right.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Ralph,
there's a possibility of that.
many words apparently. Do you have any questions about this?
I actually have more questions about his ghost encounters and stuff that you're seeing. How often do you think you go into a place that's supposedly haunted and it is, that it's not just somebody's imagination or illness or something?
If somebody contacts me or in the past when people have contacted me or my group and told us things that were going on in their home that were not happening before, or had been happening for a year, but they escalated. You don't take that as a grain of salt. You take it as fact that they definitely have something going on. They have a haunting happening. People that think because their keys are missing or something of that nature, and they find them 2 or 3 days later in the sofa, I mean, those you kind of discount and say, well, that's not a haunting.
Right.
I would probably, you have to evaluate every case before you get onto it. And I think you can relatively very quickly realize when somebody's having a serious problem or have had problems that the case is genuine and it's worthwhile to investigate. You were talking about some things that were interesting. I'll tell you about the first time I saw a shadow figure.
Okay.
You guys remember
Yes.
when GPS? You guys remember when GPS units first came out,
Right.
and you got
Yes.
one, and you didn't know what the hell you were doing. I like to fool around with a lot of electronics, and I'm kind of one of those people that never read the instruction manual. I just jump right into it and start pushing buttons.
Yep.
Well, I
You're
got
a
a
man
GPS
after
unit,
heart.
and I didn't read the manual. The manual was about as big as a New York telephone book at the time, and I said, "Heck, let me just jump in my truck and I'll punch in an address." And it was the wrong address. I found out later. But anyway, I found myself 25, 35 miles away from my home on dirt roads, no less, in the dark, not seeing any signs of life at all. And next thing I know, I get a flat tire. And by the time I stopped the truck, realizing I had a flat tire, I was in front of a small country style cemetery with maybe 4 or 5 tombstones on it, up, 50 feet away off to the side of the road. And I said, well, ain't this a hell of a place to get a flat tire? Out here in the middle of nowhere, in the dark, no less. And I
Nice.
just had an uneasiness feeling the whole time that I was there, that I was being watched or something, just was right. And I happened to start pulling tools out and the spare tire, and I happened to glance over at the tombstones, and I thought I saw a small figure run across the front of the tombstones, black, like in a blink or two of an eye. And I went, whoa, did I just see what I thought I saw? And the whole time after that, I was just pretty nervous about what I was doing.
I bet.
And yeah, I hurried up, finally got the tire on and everything, and was in the back of the truck putting the tools up. And I said out loud, I was talking to myself, I said, wow, I said, I'm glad this is over with. I'm ready to go home. And I heard a small child giggle and say goodbye.
Wow.
Jeez.
My God.
I found out too. This is true. I found out I brought the GPS unit back, and it did have a problem with it. It wasn't working right. And I mean to tell you, I was 25 or 30 miles away from my home. People that lived around here locally, when I described where I was, they didn't even know where the heck I was at. I'm talking about people that lived here all their lives. They never heard of that place, that road, and so forth. But I wasn't about to go back and try and find it. Okay. I just let it lay. And that was my experience getting my first GPS unit. I know Damien has an interest in the Queen Mary, and I don't know if we have enough time for me to talk about the 8 days I spent out on the Queen Mary back in the late '70s. But it was some pretty wild stuff. I had my wife with me, and I was out there for a convention. It was a National Association of caterers in the Restaurant Society. It was a big thing. We had thousands of people that attended that convention. I had to do some display work to set up the products that my company had. I had a display man with me to help me. But first night when I got on board the ship, I broke out a bottle of champagne, and my wife and I grabbed 2 paper cups, and I filled it up with champagne. We went to make a toast. And you know the sound that fine crystal makes when 2 glasses meet?
Right.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Tone,
Oh,
that
yeah.
ringtone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we heard ring out in the room. And we both stopped and looked at each other. And I pulled my cup back from hers and I said, "These are paper cups." And she said, "Yeah." And it freaked the hell out of us. Okay.
I bet.
And I'll just highlight some of the things that happened. One night after the convention room cleared out, the display man and I were able to get in there to set up a display for the next morning's meeting. So we were in there quite late, about 2:00 in the morning, working. We ran out of staples. So I told him, I said, "Look, I've got staples back in the room in some boxes I had shipped here with me. I'll go get some and I'll be back shortly." So I was gone maybe half hour. It's a pretty good walk back to my room. And when I was coming back toward the hallway that led to the ballroom, which wasn't lit that well, it was half lit, it was kind of dim. I thought for a second as I was carrying this box, I saw a woman there in a long evening gown. And what really caught my attention was, you know, those old style cigarette holders that are like 2 feet long that they used in the 20s and all, and smoked a cigarette in? She had one up in her mouth, no smoke though, but had one up in her mouth mimicking like she was taking a hit off a cigarette. And she might have lasted for 3 seconds, if that long. 1, 2, 3, and she was gone. So I'm just thinking, I'm tired. I didn't see what I just saw. And I get back to the guy that's working with me, and he says, "Hey," he says, "I think I just saw your wife. I heard her holler out your name over there in the hallway." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, she was dressed pretty nice too, in a long evening gown." And I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Absolutely. She called your name out." I said, "Gary," I said, "my wife, I just left in the room. She's sleeping in bed. Are you sure you saw her?" He says, "Yeah." So I told him, I said, "Well, you're not going to believe what I thought I saw just coming out of the hallway into the ballroom." And he just totally freaked out. I mean, he just lost it almost. He thought I was kidding him the whole time. But I said, "No." That was one other thing that happened. I gotten pretty good to know the manager on board the ship while I was there for that week. And day before I left, I was down in his office having coffee, and he pulled out a real thick album book from photographs from people that have stayed on board and mailed back to him on things that they had seen. And it was just some incredible stuff. I mean, from misty type figures to shadow people to, you know, lots of things that looked like blurs running in front of the camera lens. I mean, he had he had some pretty good stuff. And he gave me permission to go down to the engine room, and that's kind of freaky in itself too. There's a lot of moaning, groaning type noises down there, chains being dragged that you hear when you're down there. And there's not one functional piece of engine equipment operating, or plumbing for that matter, in that part of the ship. So you got to think that everything you're hearing is either residual type sounds or something else. You don't know.
Ralph and I did an episode on Black Lotus a while back about the Queen Mary, and we did a bunch of research into it. We didn't investigate. We didn't go there and investigate, but we did a lot of research. And one of the things that I was seeing was that there is a lot of activity below deck, and people have reported seeing like soldiers down there, sailors, naval sailors from back in the era when the Queen Mary was decommissioned as a cruise liner and commissioned as a warship. Did you see anything like that there?
I did not see anything like that, but I was with another co-worker. We were down below decks, and we were going to a meeting. No one was in the hallway. I was walking behind him, and I had to go to the bathroom. I didn't know where the men's room was, but he knew where it was. He said, "It's up there in the end of the hall." He said, "You see those two guys dressed up in military gear? They just went in it." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, those two guys in military gear, they just went in it." He wasn't even thinking, okay? And I wasn't even thinking for a second or two there. But when I got to the men's room, which was at the dead end of the hallway, there was nobody in the bathroom. No one at all. When I came out of there, I told him, I said, "You saw two guys?" And he said, "Yep. They had their helmets on, their fatigues on." He said they had everything with them but a rifle. And they walked right in that bathroom right before you did. But I didn't see it. He did it. And you got to believe what he said. I mean, why would he make that up?
Yeah, and like I said, there's been
a lot of. We had fireworks to night before the convention ended on the stern of the ship. Pretty good fireworks show, and that kind of stirred up a lot of different activity, because the next morning at breakfast, there were several people talking about unusual activities that were going on. I can't remember the name of the room on the ship that they no longer rent out. I think it's 204 or 218. I may be off on the number. That had so much paranormal activity, they don't even rent that room out. But they did at the time that I was there. And this one young lady that was in that room had people beating on the door. In the middle of the night, she'd get up, there'd be nobody there. And the hallways are so long. If somebody knocked on your door, you would have to be beyond an Olympic athlete to make it down the end of the hall to hide. Okay. I mean, that just doesn't happen. She had that kind of activity happen. She had a few things happen in a room that got moved or turned up missing, and so forth. So, but there was a lot of things that happened that night after the fireworks. I don't know if that stirred up, the blast and so forth, things that had to do with the military folks being on board that ship. But, they called that ship originally the Gray Ghost because it was painted gray as a troop transport to use during the war. And I can't recall how many people actually passed away during that period of time on board the ship, but it was quite a few. It's documented somewhere in their deal. So it's an interesting ship. For somebody to go out there and spend one night, I had a young lady asked me about a week ago. She said, "Well, I went out there and I spent 2 nights or one night. I didn't catch anything." Well, that's just how things go. I was out there 8 days and, had 3 or 4 different things happen. Maybe I got lucky and, maybe she didn't. I don't know.
Concerning that room you were talking about, I heard about that they don't rent it out anymore. However, if you are a paranormal investigator, they allow you to go in there and stay the night. But there's no accommodations
Yeah.
in there. There's no bed or anything. So you kind of have to bring your own sleeping bag and that kind of thing. But I guess it's exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah, I don't have any idea. I don't know anybody that's been able to go on board and stay in a room and do an investigation. In fact, I think I've only seen maybe 1 or 2 videos that some guys did years ago that had the opportunity to do an investigation in that room. That not much other noise coming about that particular room on the ship and people doing investigations in it. I don't know. I don't have any idea.
Well,
But it's
hey,
haunted. I'll definitely write off, say it's haunted.
yeah,
No doubt
yeah,
about it.
Guys, do you have any other questions?
Yes, but we'll need another couple hours, so maybe we should sit down and do this again. Lloyd, what do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Lloyd, you're a fantastic guest.
I'll be happy to come back. I've got plenty of things to talk about. I didn't even get to the Indian mounds I wanted to talk about tonight. That's another good one.
Now we have to.
That's actually a very interesting story. Yeah.
I'll be waiting for that picture. I need that autographed picture.
Yes,
Hey,
when
look.
he says he'll be waiting, he means he's by the end of his driveway, rain or shine. So,
So yeah, my wife just chimed in and she said, remember to like and subscribe and share. And so yeah, thank you viewers for being here. And thanks very much to Lloyd Zehner for coming back again. And once again, yeah, definitely we'll have you back again. You're a fascinating person. But anyway, we are going to get out of here. So until next time, folks, keep thinking and question everything.